everybody. I'm Oprah, and joining you today on the Mental Health Coalition Instagram handle for May's Mental Health Awareness Month. And every day there have been conversations one-on-one with people talking about the importance of mental health. I'm so happy today to be joined by Dr. Bruce Perry, who is a longtime friend, but also one of the leading foremost experts on child trauma. I've known Dr. Perry over 30 years. You first came on my show when, Bruce, in the early
89
90s?
or something?
Yeah, 89, 90. We're talking about how important taking care of your children, or being aware that the years 0 to 6 are the years where the brain is really forming itself and your personality is being formed, and how crucial those years are. We were doing that 30 years ago. We're still talking about mental health. We have this book now called What Happened to You? I don't have a book with me. Do you have it, Bruce? A copy of the book there?
I do. It's somewhere. There we go.
Okay, What Happened to You? We've written this book called What Happened to You because we believe that that's one of the most important questions anybody can ask. And the idea for the book came about when I was interviewing Bruce 3 years ago for a 60-minute story. And we were talking about trauma, child trauma, and how poverty affects your brain. Being born in an environment where you don't get your needs met affects the way your brain forms. And Bruce, Dr. Perry, had said that quite often, many children, particularly young Black boys, are diagnosed as ADHD with behavioral disorders. They are treated as though they are the problem children in school. They end up getting suspended, then expelled, then put on this track of being institutionalized for behavioral problems and disorders. And he said the real question people should not be asking is what's wrong with this child, what's wrong with this kid, and why can't they behave, and why? But what happened to them, what happened to you, and teaching from that point of view, which is a trauma-informed way of looking at that child's life. And my gosh, you can see how all that, I don't know, Bruce, when we were having that conversation, could you see the light bulb go off in my brain in that moment? Like, whoa, that's the question we should be asking.
I did. And part of what happened in my brain was, we've been talking about this for 30 years. I must be the worst teacher on the planet, or I finally sort of helped you connect the dots, because it really does sort of shift your gaze from the present mess that you're looking at to the trajectory to the present moment. And once you do that and you hear somebody's story, you can be much more compassionate and empathic.
Well, in anybody's life, that's what the big aha for me was not, oh, this isn't just for teachers or psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors working with children, asking that question of what happened to you. That is the most important question for all of us. That is why when you're dealing with somebody in your office and they just have these outbursts, or you have a boss who's like throwing things or yelling or cannot take criticism, or even a question that may sound like it's critical, and they blow up and you don't understand what in the world is wrong with that person. Right. The question is, what happened to them to cause them to behave that way? And so that question is true I started thinking about it. What happened to me in my life to make me who I am? Why do I have the fears, the apprehensions that I carried for a long time? That question is invaluable for anybody who is interested in self-evolvement, self-awareness. Would you not say, Bruce?
And it's a central question in understanding mental health, broadly speaking. One of the challenges in that field is that for so long, people tried to understand somebody who came into their office based upon the symptoms that they were saying. I have sleep problems, I'm sad, I have this. And they would just go, okay, well, you have depression. But there was not a whole lot of attention spent on, like, well, how did you get here? What was the trajectory to this point? When the field broadly has started to really go back and look at that, what we're finding is the probability that you'll develop schizophrenia, major depression, anxiety disorder, any of the traditional neuropsychiatric problems is very, very significantly connected to your earlier developmental experiences with chaos, stress, threat, abandonment, shame, all kinds of things.
Really, what it boils down to, everybody who's listening to us for the Mental Health Coalition, is this. If you did not get your needs met at an early age, literally crying and nobody came, or trying to be seen or heard or validated and nobody responded, your brain formed differently than other people who got what they needed. And what I have learned is if you didn't get what you need at that age, you spend your life searching for that thing based upon what happened, or as Bruce says in our book, hold up the book, Bruce, in our book, what happened to you, as Bruce says in our book, what happened to you, it's what happened to you, and equally as important is what did not happen to you, right?
Right. And what didn't happen for you, you know?
What happened to you, that's your quote. What happened to you and what didn't happen for you. And so this book is about not blaming anybody. It's not about now, being able to whine about your life or complain about what you didn't get, but it helps to explain. It's not blaming, it's explaining to you what happened so that you have a better understanding of why you choose the relationships that you do, why you can't seem to move forward, why you sabotage yourself, why you have certain fears. In my case, why you have this disease to please, why you have a problem in confrontation, or why you are so confrontational. So it helps explain why you have the behaviors that you do, and also allows you to see how you can begin to use what has happened to you to move forward, to turn your post-traumatic wounds into post-traumatic wisdom. And that's not just a rhetorical phrase. It really means taking your pain and turning that into power. Because what I believe is that everything that's happened to you strengthened you if you still standing. If you're still here, it means that you gain some kind of information, knowledge, ability to move forward, and strength times strength times strength times strength times strength equals power. So now you take that pain and you use it to be more helpful to somebody else.
Exactly. And that, that one of the most important parts of mental health is recognizing that it's not just the dysfunctional part of how we function mentally. It's recognizing that there's this whole other component that's about wellness, that there's mental wellness is really the important counterbalance to mental struggle.
And, well, that's what I'm hoping. Number one, our book, What Happened to You?
Oh, yes.
This is what I'm hoping. What happened to you? What happened to you helps people to see for themselves. And also the series that you were a part of experting and counseling us on, along with 13 other, really outstanding experts from around the country, for the Me You Can't See that's airing right now on Apple, is that people will learn from watching that series or reading our book that the sharing of your story, the being open to people who can receive what has happened to you, is the beginning of healing. That's why one of the things that I am so proud of with everybody from Lady Gaga to NBA star DeMar DeRozan to, Jenny Fuchs with her OCD, to Fauzi, the Syrian refugee, who's all a part of our series, The Me You Can't See, sharing their stories, allowing us to see what their particular disorder or dysfunction is. And what I've received the information from, like watching Twitter and other social platforms, is people are like, oh yeah, oh, so that has a name. There's a lot of, I felt that too. I felt that too from people.
Yeah, and I think historically, people have felt very inhibited about sharing emotional struggles or problems because it's, our society still has a lot of stigma about people who have those kinds of challenges. Nobody ever is embarrassed by saying, hey, I went to the doctor and it turns out that I have high blood pressure.
Right.
You feel shamed by that. But when you say, hey, it turns out that I have major depression, that's the kind of water cooler conversation that you don't hear very often because people feel embarrassed about it. They think it makes them either uh, morally or emotionally weak. And
Deficient.
in fact, it's just not true.
Yeah, and I think one of the things the Me You Can't See on Apple TV Plus airing right now does is, and if you don't have a subscription, you can get a week trial free period. One of the things that it does is normalize this conversation.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm seeing in social media, is that a lot of people are calling out, yes, I had this too, or I experienced that, especially Prince Harry doing his EMDR therapy in front of a camera, in front of millions of people around the world. I've never seen so many people on social say, oh, I've tried that too, or that works for me too, or literally changed my life. So I think, people who wouldn't have spoken up about it, because how do you explain that tapping myself and, doing that kind of therapy is going to make a difference to somebody? But now that they've seen Prince Harry do it, makes a world of difference, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think that series is really a tremendous courage on the part of the people who participated in it, in sharing their stories, because it is a hard thing. There are many people in the world that are still don't understand mental health issues.
Yes. And I think particularly, one of the things that What Happened to You, the book What Happened to You, allows people to see is that many times in your life, when you get set off by something, where somebody upsets you, where you're having some kind of behavioral dysfunction, that is not because of what's happening in front of you, it's because of what had happened to you years ago. And that thing in front of you is triggering those feelings from the past, which is a form of PTS. And I didn't even understand that until I started working with Alex, who you see in the series, in part 2 of the series. When she first, young girl who first, I met during the show that we were doing, the big car giveaway, and befriended her and thought I'll be a mentor for her and help her get through school. And 17 years later, still dealing with her and PTS and all of the different forms that it takes, even though now she's doing much better and is maintaining a job. But the way you explain in the series what PTS is, or PTSD is, can you do that right now? Because a lot of people get triggered by things, even triggered in their own relationships with their children, because the children are at an age where something really traumatic happened to them, and they're not even aware that that's bringing up all of their stuff from when they were 8.
Exactly. Well, and all of this relates to what we talk about in the book in terms of how the brain develops from the bottom up, and it's trying to make sense of the world all the time. So it takes things that co-occur, a sight and a sound, and it weaves them together. It literally makes a neuronal connection. And so your brain's filled with these little associations about what happened to you when you were young. And so your brain,
it never goes away, right, Bruce?
It never goes away.
There. Never goes away. That's
so
why you can be 40 years old and dreaming about your 5th grade class. Yeah,
exactly. And so if the first time you got up to give a public presentation, you were shamed, you're not going to feel comfortable giving public talks much later on. If the first time you had a neighbor, you walked out past a neighbor's yard and their dog attacked you, you're going to have a hard time coming to like dogs. And your brain sort of makes these connections based upon these earliest experiences. And then you filter all present experience through these previous associations. And so, if you have the present moment has some evocative cue, some sensory input that's similar to a past experience, all of a sudden your brain is back in that moment, reacting the way you did at that point. And if the experience was terrifying, you may find yourself in the middle of a business meeting, completely anxious and not understanding why you want to get out of that room, when could be something as simple as the person who's presenting has a haircut that's similar to the coach who humiliated you when you're in gym class.
Wow.
I mean, the catalog of stories I've heard about connecting the dots when people sort of finally do it, it's astounding. It could be a smell, it could be a song, a specific country western song that was playing in the garage when your mom's boyfriend was abusing you. 10 years later, you're at a bar with friends and that somebody puts that on the jukebox, you completely fall apart.
And you don't even know why.
You don't have a clue why.
You don't have a clue.
You end up in the ER because you had this complete meltdown and people think that you're having a psychotic break.
Wow. That's so interesting about the haircut, because you tell the story in the book, What Happened to You. You tell the story in the book, What Happened to You. You got to learn to be more subtle with that.
I know, I'm not.
Okay, so you tell the story in the book about a young boy who was having extreme difficulties with a teen. Okay, tell a story about a boy who was having extreme difficulties with a particular teacher, and you later found out it was because the teacher was wearing Old Spice cologne, and the Old Spice cologne was a trigger for this boy who had been, abused by his father, who used to always wear Old Spice. So I just think there are so many myriads of ways to begin to move your life forward. And I believe that asking that question of what happened to me, whether you're having problems now or not, is just, it opens up the aperture of your life. So I would hope that you would purchase a book. I'm not trying to make money off of a book. I'm taking all my proceeds and sending it right back to where What Happened to Me began, Kosciuszko, Mississippi, Boys and Girls Club there. That have little boys and girls who are just like I was growing up in Mississippi, just needing somebody to believe in them. And most important, I want people to be able to get it for themselves. So watch The Me You Can't See on Apple TV Plus and get the book, and know this, that no matter what has happened to you, what has happened to you can become your superpower.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bruce. And the book again is?
Thank you, Oprah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Kenneth Cole and the Mental Health Coalition, for allowing us this conversation.